All right, here we're going to have a look at the new OY3X chassis. OY3X stands for Wish 3X, so 110, 125, or 100 millimeter. Wheel combinations, a couple different wheelbases. This is one of the prototype versions, clear anodized. It's brand new, haven't been used. We did put some bolts in them. The chassis will come with 6 speed axles and includes 6 spacers for the bearings that go on the wheels. The chassis comes with 4 riser adapters. These are used to mount on a UFS boot with the chassis. You can run up to 125 millimeter wheels. Use 1 riser in the rear to mount on a rec boot, and you can run up to 125 millimeter wheels. We also include the hardware and fasteners to mount it to just about any boot that's out there. We've got a 5/16 by 18 thread by 1 inch long fastener. This is used for the Deluxe mounts. We'll show you that a little bit later. We have M6, which is the standard UFS fastener thread, M6 by 1, 25 millimeter length. This is to mount with the chassis, a sole plate, the riser to a UFS boot. We have M6-1 by 20. This is used to mount the chassis with the riser to UFS boot. No sole plate in between. And we have M6 by 16 fasteners, which is used to mount the chassis to a sole plate to UFS boot, no riser. And then we have M6 by 12. These are used to mount the chassis directly to the boot on UFS, usually a carbon boot like carbon sub or USD carbon. And then we include some washers so you can space the length of these bolts if you need to make sure they're not poking into your foot. We've tried to choose sizes that won't happen, but every boot is obviously a little bit different. So we provide these just to accommodate that if necessary. When we mount the chassis directly to a boot or right onto a sole plate, not using the risers, we can fit 110 millimeter wheel max on the long wheelbase and 100 millimeter wheel max on the short wheelbase. In any configuration, the max size wheel that can fit on the short wheelbase is 100 millimeter. In any configuration, you can fit 110 on the outer, and if you use the risers to mount to a UFS boot or a rec boot, then you can fit 125 on the outside. Also, we want to make sure the chassis is rigid, so we've engineered it to have some pretty thick wall sections. We didn't want to make it to be too heavy, so a lot of this material is machined away to keep it lightweight, while at the same time keeping the structural rigidity. It cues a little bit from the design of it to have these hollow spaces, kind of off, I guess you would say, off-angled sections and curvatures to the geometry. And then we have a contoured sidewall that will accommodate a fairly good thick section at the wall to make sure that it remains stiff. We want to make sure it's responsive and can hold up a lot of weight and a lot of torque when we're using those 125 millimeter wheels. And we were talking about a deluxe mount. This is what we're mentioning here. Some of these rec boots, they have an aluminum plate in the bottom. For normal rec frames, it allows you to use extra bolts. You can offset them, you can offset the angle. That's something that is unique to this type of mounting system. This mounting system accommodates a 165 millimeter mount. It also accommodates a 195 millimeter mount for some longer racing frames. In the application here with the OY3X chassis, we just need to take advantage of this 165 millimeter mounting distance. It's really similar to the UFS mounting distance, 167. And ours is going to remain centered. We're not going to do any offsetting. These take a certain thread. It is different from the UFS standard, and that's the 5/16-18 thread, which is a US standard thread. So anytime you're using those deluxe mounts, it requires a different type of thread. We provide these, and the other bolt that comes on the front of your rec boot, you can use that to mount the front mount on the OY3X chassis. We do include these for the rear, so they're long enough to accommodate the riser plate. We'll take a look here at mounting the chassis to a rec boot. This is just the standard rec mount. It's not the deluxe version mount. what we'll do is just take the adapter riser, put it in place, grab the chassis, put that in place. We grab our fastener for the rear. It's M6 by 25 millimeter. And for the front, you can use the standard fastener that came with the boot when you got it, or you can use our M6-1 by 12 millimeter long fastener that we include in the package. One of the things that's a little different between a rec mount and a UFS mount is the geometry of the mount itself. So on a UFS mount, the whole system is designed where the mounting locations are centered about the boot. That's kind of the whole intent of it. On a rec system, it's a little off-center system. It's really designed to capture the direction of force through the heel and into the chassis. And the frames are designed in a way that compensates to make the wheelbase centered relative to your foot, or just if there's a certain design a little bit off-center. So what we've done is just a simple thing to accommodate for both UFS and 165 mount. Is you just have a little slot that allows you to just shift the chassis forward on the boot. You can just shift it into place, and that way the wheels become centered about your foot. We'll just tighten this up. And then we'll look at installing some wheels. We'll start out here. We're going to install some 125s on the rec boot to see how it fits. What happens on a rec boot with most three-wheel frames anyway, this isn't necessarily an advantage we have, but we take advantage of the situation, is you have a little bit of space underneath the arch of the boot due to the raised heel, so we can push the wheel a little bit closer to the boot without having any interference there. That is just inherent in the heel raise for the rec mount standard for the 165. So our riser plates, they accommodate that. So, we want to try to keep the wheels as close to your foot as possible, especially 125s. They're already really tall. So that's what it looks like with the 125s. The 125 110 wheelbase is going to be 281 millimeter. It has a slight rocker. That slight rocker is used to make the chassis just a little bit more maneuverable. What it does is it lowers the center wheel compared to the outer wheels, so your weight is going to be distributed a little bit more on the center wheel. It's a soft urethane 85A for most 125s. It's going to cause the middle wheel to compress just a little bit more than the outer wheels, and then you can shift your weight forward and backwards. It'll just give you a little bit more ability to turn. We still have stability from the long wheelbase, and it just makes it easier to get into some wheel slides, different things like that, without making it unstable. At high speed, you can easily go something like 35-40 miles an hour in these if you want to. We're just fitting up some 100 millimeter wheels here, just to show you what it's like. The 100 millimeter wheelbase is going to be 246. That's the final dimension. It's flat. It's similar to the length of an 80 millimeter, 4 by 80 millimeter frame wheelbase. So it's got good maneuverability. You can still go over lots of bumps. It's just a little bit more compact. You don't have the huge wheels, a little bit closer to your foot. It's good just for messing around, going through a city or something like that. If you're really going long distances, you set up the 110s or the 125s if you just really want to have a nice cruise. We'll take a look at mounting the chassis on a UFS boot. So this is a flat style UFS boot, flat bottom sole plate, carbon boot. No different than mounting them on the sole plate of a raised heel boot. Same process. This is with 110 millimeter wheels, so maximum you can fit without using the risers is 110 millimeter. And then we can fit 100 millimeter max on the small wheelbase without using the riser. On the small wheelbase, in any case, you can only fit maximum 100 millimeter wheel. The outer wheelbase allows you to fit 110 or 125 if you're using the risers. Let's go ahead and take these out. When we're mounting the chassis to a UFS boot, if we're using a sole plate or it has an integrated sole plate with a lot of raised heel boots, the UFS bosses that are standard on the sole plate will align with the chassis, and that will center it about the boot. So it's easy alignment if you're using FS. Same if you're using the adapter, just goes on the same location. We'd use 2 adapters if we run 125 millimeter wheels. We can also mount this directly to the boot with no sole plate. If we do that, because we have a 165 millimeter mount for rec integrated into the chassis, it allows us to just slightly shift the chassis forward and backwards. So you can kind of dial it into how you like. You maybe like it a little bit shifted forward, maybe you like it just a little bit shifted back. You can do that if you mount it directly to the boot. We can also mount directly to the boot using the adapters, or pretty much in this case they're just a riser. So we just get those centered. We'll grab our 20 millimeter fastener, and then we can just set this directly into the boot. If you're not worried about centering it exactly, you just slide the chassis on and just push it all the way back. The top, the top crescent of the slot that we have here will capture the bolt, and that'll make it about center, plus or minus half a millimeter. You can just grab your thumbs to center these risers, just for aesthetics, so they match up really nicely. The risers will be black to match the black anodized chassis. We're just using the silver ones here to make it really apparent, what we're doing and what's being done to accommodate 125s. So if you haven't ridden 125s, they're definitely really tall. They're really fast, and they make skating long distance really easy. So you can just have a nice long distance cruise, still get a little bit of exercise, but once you're tired and worn out, it's easy to get back home. And there we go. Again, the 125 millimeter wheelbase, which also accommodates the 110s, it just has a little bit of a rocker just to make turning a little bit easier. We want to keep long wheelbase stability, but we don't want turning to feel like you're on railroad tracks. So we just incorporate a little bit of rocker. Helps you shift your weight forward or backward, lift the opposite wheel up off the ground just a bit. I mean, it's still really touching. It's kind of sliding across the ground. It makes those turns just feel a little bit more comfortable. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be happy to answer as much as we can.